I've felt fear while listening to scary stories or watching horror movies and replaying certain scenes over and over again in my mind when I can't fall asleep easily. But what I felt at that moment was beyond fear. There's a lot of ridiculously optimistic stereotypes that pop culture tries to feed us about high school, friendships that last a lifetime, songs, dancing, and good food, but reality is stone-cold opposite. We get drab classrooms, hopeless food choices, and teachers who most definitely hate us. Yet, trying to make the most of it, I, a 14-year-old novice, chose to be an active participant in my school's cultural dance club in a wishful attempt to make my life as a student more exciting. But I ended up getting more than what I bargained for. Our practices would usually end in the early evening, but this was the night of my very first performance. After owning the stage at a local stadium, my team and I got back to the school compound at around 10:30 p.m. The exhaustion weighed me down, but my heart was racing from the excitement of my debut. Was this it? Was I going to make it big? Was dancing my calling? Our cultural dance club's HQ was located on the 3rd floor of the canteen building. Laughing and chatting with exhilaration, we hiked up 3 flights of stairs to the room which stood amongst other classrooms. My legs felt like jelly after the longest night I've had in a while. As soon as the doors were unlocked, I plonked on the floor and laid relaxing till almost all my teammates had changed out of their costumes. Pondering for a few seconds, I decided that I was too conscious to change out of my costume in front of the others and left the club room alone. As the door shut behind, I realized that the hallways were pitch dark, with not a single light source in sight. Uncertainty slowly bubbled up in my chest. But I had to change out of my outfit. I was too shy to go back in, and too drained to be scared. Anyways, what's the worst that could happen? I made my way across the dark hallway, trying to find a spot to change out of my costume. The air was chilly, and the night was dead silent. I couldn't even hear the distant laughter from my clubmates anymore. Unease began creeping in my mind as I looked around my surroundings. Most of the classrooms on the 3rd floor had grills for doors which had been locked by the guards, all except for one. 3 Creative. Surprisingly, the back door of 3 Creative was left wide open. Without hesitating, I walked towards the classroom, the sound of my footsteps echoing throughout the hallway. It almost felt as though someone was walking with me. Before entering the class, my eyes fell upon my own distorted reflection on the classroom window. I looked like a complete mess with smudged makeup and a pale complexion illuminated by the moon outside. Just as I turned, my eyes caught sight of another reflection that wasn't mine. It was just my imagination, I thought, as I went into the classroom. Immediately I felt goosebumps crawling up my body. It was a feeling I've never experienced before. In a blink, the atmosphere had changed. The room was damp, and there was this deafening silence that almost sounded like somebody was sucking the life out of the place slowly. I stood at the back of the class, on the left side, next to the exit. I willed myself not to worry about it. It was probably my tired mind which was playing tricks on me. With shaky hands, I placed a fresh set of clothes on the table and was about to change when my shoulders went tense. My eyes darted nervously around the dark room. I felt a sinister presence, one that I could not explain. It was when my eyes landed on a table at the opposite end of the classroom that my breathing stopped. A tall, skinny boy sat there in his white school uniform, his dark hair a mess and his body almost too straight to be human. He was staring at the information board behind the class with a frozen body. He seemed like he wasn't breathing. I went numb all over. He turned his head ever so slowly until a pair of bloodshot eyes were looking at me. Those 2 red slits were filled with insane rage, as though I had just trespassed his territory. His head began bending to the left with an alarming creaking sound, and a low, deep gurgle was coming from this throat. What those scary movies or stories portray could not match up to the mix of emotions I felt. It was as though every fiber of my being was screaming while my mouth remained tightly shut. I was paralyzed. My heart sped up beyond what it could handle, and my blood ran cold. Without thinking, I grabbed my clothes and ran out of the classroom and back into the clubroom. My whole body was shaking as my mind tried to make sense of what had just happened. A small crowd formed around me, and I explained what I saw, stuttering as I failed to capture it in words. But my seniors, they didn't look surprised. Apparently, Occurrences like these were very common in this school, especially in this particular building. From that day on, many of my friends stayed away from that classroom, especially after school hours. Whenever I cross an empty street or find myself alone in a dark room, my mind reels back to the memories from that encounter and the threat he held in his eyes. I was sure something horrible would have happened if I had stayed longer. Every school has a story, a history hidden away from the public. So beware of those moving shadows that you see from the corner of your eyes. They aren't as harmless as you think. It started with the lunch menu. Scrawled in messy handwriting where chicken patty should have been were the words, "Miss Henderson's surprise." A nervous titter ran through the cafeteria. Miss Henderson, the new lunch lady, was an enigma. Gaunt, with perpetually bloodshot eyes, her smile never quite reached them. We whispered theories, maybe a surprise new recipe, maybe a contest winner's choice. The surprise arrived, covered in a silver cloche. When Miss Henderson lifted it, the cafeteria fell silent. On the tray, nestled in a bed of wilted lettuce, wasn't a chicken patty, but a phone. A dusty flip phone, its chipped plastic shimmering under the fluorescent lights. Confusion turned to morbid curiosity. Miss Henderson, her voice flat, announced, "This phone belonged to someone very special. Someone who won't be needing lunch anymore." She gestured for Sarah, the shy girl who always sat alone, to come take it. Sarah, wide-eyed, choked back a sob and walked to the front. The next day, Sarah was gone. In her place, another phone sat on the menu board. Sarah's choice. The phone displayed a picture of a younger Sarah, beaming with a group of kids. We recognized them, all students who had mysteriously vanished in the last few weeks. Panic blossomed. Rumors of a vengeful spirit or a sinister cult swirled. Parents started pulling their kids out. The principal, a stout, balding man, dismissed it as mass hysteria. Then came my turn. The phone showed a picture of me and my best friend Emily. We were laughing, arms slung around each other. My stomach lurched. Above the picture, in the same messy handwriting, were the words, "Maybe they'll miss you less if you join them." Terror gnawed at me. I ran, out of the cafeteria, out of the school. I haven't looked back. Now whenever I hear a ringing phone, I feel a cold sweat prickle my skin. The image of Miss Henderson's smile, tinged with a hint of red, haunts my dreams. The bell shrieked, a banshee wail that ripped me from the clutches of a particularly nasty math problem. Groaning, I shoved my books into my backpack, the stale air of Mr. Johnson's room clinging to me like a bad smell. Outside, the hallways were eerily quiet. Usually, the after-school rush was a cacophony of slamming lockers and frantic chatter. Today, the silence felt heavy, broken only by the rhythmic dripping of a leaky faucet somewhere down the hall. A shiver danced down my spine. I quickened my pace, my sneakers squeaking against the polished floor. A sudden movement in the corner of my eye made me jump. Just a stray backpack, slumped against the wall, looking like a deflated whoopee cushion. Then I heard it, a faint scratching sound, like fingernails scraping against a chalkboard. It seemed to be coming from the old trophy case at the end of the hallway. Curiosity, a tiny annoying gremlin, poked its head out from the corner of my mind. The trophy case gleamed under the dim fluorescent lights, each glass shelf crammed with dusty plastic figures and tarnished plaques. The scratching grew louder, more insistent. I tiptoed closer, drawn to the source like a moth to a flame. Squinting, I peered through the glass. My breath hitched. There, nestled amongst a collection of bowling trophies and a chipped soccer ball, was a hand. A bony, skeletal hand, its long fingers clawing desperately at the glass from the inside. I stumbled back, heart hammering against my ribs. The scratching stopped. In the sudden silence, a low moaning sound filled the hallway, a mournful keening that sent shivers down my spine. Panic clawed at my throat. I spun on my heel and bolted, my legs burning with the need to get away. Bursting out of the school doors, I didn't stop running until I reached the safety of my own porch, chest heaving. Safe, but with a chilling suspicion. What lurked within those dusty halls, and why was it trapped behind glass, forever doomed to claw its way out? One thing was for sure, I wouldn't be staying late for detention anytime soon.